Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 246. How to choose the right fantasy subgenre for you.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build.
Jeff?
Yeah. Oh,
Jeff.
Hi. Welcome back to the show. My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And
the brain damaged.
And clear-minded, I am Michael Miller. Care to explain your brain damage, Jeff?
Yes, and I'm
now. I don't know this story, guys, so I'm hearing this for the first time right now. But Jeff shot me a message earlier today saying that he could only record one shorter episode today because let me see. What did you write? You wrote, "I have a broken head."
Yes,
and now I get to find out why your head is broken.
Yes, and this is exactly how it happened. I swear.
Is that to say you're lying or?
Well, you can choose, but I was taking the baby for a walk around the neighborhood, and a meteor came crashing into my neighborhood.
Okay, I already don't believe you because I don't think that you take the baby for walks. That's the unbelievable part.
That's the unbelievable part. Not that I put my head between the meteor and the baby to save the baby. That part's not believable.
No, I believe that. I would believe you would do that.
Does not take it.
No, I just don't see you exercising. That's farcical.
That's farcical. Shit. So bad. I'm not even recording this episode right now, so that's fine. We'll just keep going. We have the other audio.
Mm-hmm. You're just gonna have to work.
Yep. And but essentially, banged the back of my head with a meteor striking it violently.
How did you bang your head? It was the headboard, wasn't it?
No.
It was the headboard.
That would actually be better. That'd be a better story. No,
yeah.
I was actually working around the house, and we have a hanging shelf.
Oh,
no. And so I'm kind of moving around, and I kind of moved under it, and I stood up.
You stood up quick?
Stood up at top speed, and luckily I didn't go cheap on buying the shelf because I didn't want one with crappy things that would just fall apart at first noggin. So there's two solid metal clasp at each end of it, and the metal clasp struck my head.
Did you see stars and drop?
I did not drop. I didn't know I had a concussion, but essentially I just got worse all night, and finally the next morning, like my vision was blurry, and like slept maybe a couple hours.
You didn't go to the doctor that night?
No, I just thought like I've hit my head several times in my life, and
that's no good.
That's no good. Well, there's no blood. It didn't cut the skin.
Well, I know, but sleeping on a concussion is supposed to be really bad.
That's not. They kind of are going back and forth on that one right now. They're not so sure on that.
Yeah,
I think it depends on the severity of it. They might want to ice.
Well, yes, but waking up with bad vision the next morning, that seems significant.
Well, I kind of had bad vision. Yeah, I don't know when I had bad vision, but I had bad vision at some point. But definitely by the next morning, my vision was bad.
How many fingers?
4.
It's probably an issue then, because I'm just showing you the one.
Oh, I thought you were just holding up all 4 fingers at me.
Nope, just the one.
But yeah, no. So I smashed my head. I'm not supposed to look at screens right now. I'm not supposed to read. I'm not supposed
Jeff,
to think.
we don't have to do this. What are you doing? Are you serious?
This is a quick one. I'm good enough. So yeah, we started. It's too late. Okay, so time to go into.
All right. Well, we're gonna make this short then. I didn't know that. I would have insisted that we hold off.
I have already recorded 2 things today.
Yeah, so I know you've probably been looking at screens and reading all freaking day.
Well, I actually have taken several large breaks. I will actually get a physical headache when I do it too long, and I stop. I ice down my head, and I close my eyes. And the problem is I can't follow the instructions because it's like, how do you not think? You know, they're like, it's like your ankle. But the thing is, I don't have to step on my foot. For me to understand the instructions the physician gave me, I had to break the instructions.
One of the instructions is literally don't think.
Well, it's like, keep it to a minimum, you know, because the problem is it's like stepping on your foot. If you have a bad ankle, you're working a strained muscle, essentially, was the way it was described to me.
That seems kind of wrong.
But especially screens especially reading. Anything that engages the mind, you should not do when you have a concussion, apparently. But, I mean, there's some truth to it. Like, I called my sister because I was bored last night, and I talked to her, and I got literally a headache after an hour.
Yeah.
So, and I do like my sister, so it's not because I didn't like the conversation.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's get to it then. Now I feel super guilty, but you want to charge through, so let's try.
Well, that's actually the reason I wanted to do the call, to make you feel bad. So, okay.
Okay, so we're talking about deciding on a subgenre to create around, whether it is, to write around or, create a comic book or whatever the thing is, like, you need to consider what genre of fantasy or science fiction you're headed for. And
this is, in a way, an impossible task. There are so many, I mean, really, anything plus fantasy becomes a subgenre. So there'll be ones that interest us. And one of the members of the Undercroft actually asked for us to go over like a couple different genres. And we're not doing that today. For me, I have to have a process for how I do things because I'm anal like that. So I want to think about what's really important to think about, and the first thing is, are you doing this as a game master? Are you doing this as a creative who wants to share out work like a book or a video game or make a movie or a television show, whatever you want to do? Those will affect it. I mean, the more expensive the end product is to make, in a way, it's probably going to be harder to pick obscure genres. If you have needlework fantasy genre, which there could very well be one, it might not be a large enough audience to pay for $100 million movie. So there are some considerations like that, but in general, I think of stuff more out of the indie sense of things, where you're bootstrapping it together. You're finding editors to work with. And so you're going to come out from an aspect of things that you like, but also things that there's an audience for. And the nice thing is that if there's a listed genre where people are talking about it, there are at least some people who listen to it and or read it, to the point where I know, oh my goodness, there is an Amish science fiction writer.
Really?
Yes. And he sells pretty well. He makes a full-time living writing Amish science fiction.
Now, does that mean he's Amish and, by the way, he writes science fiction, or the science fiction is subgenred in an Amish culture?
It is a subgenre in an Amish. I think it's like post-Holocaust, where everyone's kind of forced Amish, maybe, or something like that.
Well, I mean, look, post-Holocaust, the Amish are going to be just fine by comparison to everybody.
They will outperform everyone else, but I think it's from the Amish, the future from the Amish perspective. And part of me thinks it is a post-apocalyptic or possibly a type of fiction.
Yeah, it makes sense. Before we get too deep, I do want to just mention that this episode was not specifically requested, but definitely inspired by George. George, we had a thread on the Undercroft for people to basically throw in things that they would like us to talk about. It gave us a whole bunch of show ideas. So, George, I'm just giving you a shout out. There's also a lot of people who have joined the Undercroft recently, and I need to compile a new list. I'm sure anyone who's in there has noticed that I have not been in the Undercroft a whole heck of a lot lately. There's been a lot of stuff going on outside of the show lately with, my father and my wife. So I've been a little absent lately, and I apologize, but I in the next episode or two, I will compile a new list so I can shout out all the new members. I wanted to do that for this episode, but I just didn't get to it. So otherwise, George, thank you for inspiring this, because we're also going to do some of the genre episodes to follow. We're going to do like a series, and some of them are. I like some of the ones that George listed specifically, so we may do 1, 2, or all 3 of the ones that I have listed from him. So
yeah. I mean, we probably will. The question is, into what detail would depend on our knowledge of the genres, because there's a list I sent to Michael that I found online from, I think, Best Fantasy Books.
That's exactly right.
And I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
BestFantasyBooks.com.
There are all kinds of genres. There's lots of overlap. Some are sub-genres, really. And you can think about it in a bigger bucket way, but the bigger thing is to think about, is, to me, what kind of story do you want to write or share ultimately? That should drive you. If you want it to involve space opera, that's kind of the genre you're going to naturally go towards. If you want it to involve, like, the military tactics, it's going to be more of a military-based fantasy genre. Is it on Earth? Is it an alternate Earth? Is it Earth the way we perceive it now, but with pockets like Harry Potter? These are all things that can, kind of help find this genre for you. But in a way, it's good to know if you plan to share it out, because it's a quick way to describe to people who like the genre that you're writing for them, and they might like what you're doing. So I think it is a good thing. But ultimately, I think you need to spend some time reading, playing, and or watching in the genre to make sure it fits for you. Like, maybe it sounds like a good idea on paper, but sometimes once you get started, you're like, this is actually not what I want to do. So, definitely, whenever you think you picked one, spend some time, consume some of the fiction that's been made for it already.
Because it also could be something that you're attracted to, but you don't know enough about. Like steampunk's pretty cool, but I don't know a whole heck of a lot about steam technology. So I would have to both consume some steampunk fiction, and also, for me, I'd want to learn actually about legitimate steampunk technology and turn-of-the-century technology, so that I could talk about it in a way that sounds convincing and maybe not realistic, but at least believable.
Yeah. And I think, it's like, for me, the steampunk genre has always been confusing, just because the idea, to me, when you put the word punk on it, that's what kind of catches my attention. And I get that it's like steam and like, where essentially everything is like steam equipment, which, okay, I have a very liberal mind for allowing pretty much anything. So that part doesn't, but when you put the word punk, and I start thinking of like cyberpunk, and the reason why you use the word punk attached to it, and I don't understand how Victorian steam engine stuff gone crazy matches up with the word punk. So, and that's probably one I know there's a lot of stuff on. Maybe I should do some more research on that one myself, because that's one it definitely catches the attention though. So whoever came up with that word definitely won there. But I think that's one of the big things is, if you really want to be engaged, especially out with the public and selling products, and you're saying that you're part of a certain genre, you have to be pretty well versed in it. You need to know who the players are, maybe the people who led into it, but you need to be able to speak to the people who like the genre, especially like if you're out and you meet someone and they're like, oh, you're trying to write the genre that I like, and they start talking to you about the genre. If you can't speak to it, you should not be creating fiction in it.
Hang on a second. I'm just looking up a couple of things. I'm waiting for something to load. As usual, my search engine stuff is going slow. So punk is defined as a loud, fast-moving, and aggressive form of rock music, popular in the late 70s and early 80s. It's also defined as a worthless person, often used as a general term of abuse. It can also be used as a noun. It can also be used as an adjective in poor or bad condition. I felt too punk to eat would be a context that seems weird, but also can be used as a subculture like a punk band. I also am waiting for Urban Dictionary to load because I'm curious what
I do know, like, for the
it.
people who came up with like the cyberpunk genre, the idea was it was the sort of like punk music setting. sort of in a future where corporations pretty much run the world was the point,
So very anti-corporate, anti-establishment.
Anti-establishment sort of, and if you've ever played a cyberpunk game or read a cyberpunk book, that is very much wrapped into it where
absolutely.
Even if the person isn't intentionally going to try and do it, the story will cause those kinds of clashes to come up. So that's where, and I think of the genre with the word punk into it attached to that. So I might have to consume some steampunk at some point. Because to me, if you don't have the punk in there,
I feel like the word.
It feels like they maybe just slapped the word on there because so many people like cyberpunk.
I think that's probably what they did. But when you start using the word punk like that, the word punk for me always brings up a feeling or a commitment to rebellion. Mm-hmm. So it works really well with cyberpunk. With steampunk, I don't get that feeling like from the stories and stuff that I've been exposed to. I just think they like the sound of the word, and it fits well to say, hey, coming onto a role-playing or fantasy scene to create a subgenre and adding the word punk to it, as opposed to like calling it Victorian steam fiction, which is probably more accurate or
a lot more boring. But I think too, it's like it's such a newer genre that I think a lot of the people weren't familiar with the punk rock movement at all, or enough of their audience isn't familiar with it that it doesn't, that word doesn't have the same connotation. They think of it as in, this different way technology works. And so I mean it just maybe shows that we're old.
Maybe, but I think it
because I'm not here to question the names of genres. We will, but that's not the point of it. Going back, the thing is, you do need to be well versed in. Like, if I said I was coming out with a steampunk book after hearing this conversation, you should be questioning how good it would be because I don't know enough about the genre. Therefore, I would have to research it more before I really would go into the genre.
I was about to say, I would not question your ability to write a steampunk book because I know because of your lack of familiarity, you would do a ton of research. So I would have confidence in your abilities.
And I like to think, which is a real problem when you're brain damaged because you're not supposed to think.
All right, so let me do some of it. You talk about like what you're familiar with and what. I mean, really, when we're talking about genres, I think theme and technology. So talking about steampunk, talking about cyberpunk, talking about ferret fantasy. So it's like all fantasy, but all ferrets.
Yeah, I mean, you always talk about fantasy will always be in there because we're talking about fantasy genres,
of course,
or subgenres.
But
any other genre of fiction plus fantasy becomes a fantasy subgenre,
of course. But you also want to know, like, why are you looking? Like, why are you looking for a genre as opposed to something that's whether it's an established genre or you're trying to create something? Like, why are you doing it?
Yeah, and I think that's a very important question to ask yourself. And part of it is maybe you're looking for kind of structure and stuff to base off of, which is fine. I think one of the things you have to look at is how popular the genre is, and the reason is there are problems if it's popular or not. So if it's really popular, there are going to be lots of people there throwing books out. If 10 people read it, your max sales a year or a book is 10. So there could be problems no matter where you go, but you can prepare for them if you know how popular a genre is.
I think the other thing when it comes to like if you're going to choose a genre, the benefit of that is almost like all the shorthand is already established. So if you're going to do like a cyberpunk, a generic fantasy, people who've paved the way, we all know what trolls are. We all know what elves are. We all know what dwarves are. We all know what, the Matrix is. So this stuff has been established already. It gives you a very strong foundation to build off of. And I think having that shortcut can save a tremendous amount of time world building stuff that will unnecessarily eat your creativity when it doesn't need to. You can spend more time working on what makes your story and your genre or world more individual.
Yeah, and I think the thing you have to think about too when you get in there is which of those words are copyrighted and which of those words are common parlance.
Yeah.
Like the reason like a lot of the same monsters and races get used across fantasy genres or fantasy books is because those aren't copyrighted. You can't copyright elf. That goes back way before there were printing presses. So, but you can use a little research to go, okay, I've decided I'm going to use a mind flare. And then you realize, oh, wait, that's actually that was made up by Dungeons and Dragons. I can't touch that word.
Yeah.
And I don't really know if that's true. I know that's one they came up with. I don't know if you can't use it or not. But you'd have to research if you want to use that parlance in your book or in your fiction. If you're doing it for sales. If you're a game master, you just stick to what you like or what you know your players like. It becomes a lot simpler.
So you have one here that says GM versus sharing creative. And what exactly do you mean by that?
Just what I said. It's like, if you're a game master, you know who your audience is. If you're looking for something new you want to do, ask them what they're interested in because that's who you have to appeal to. If you're...
That's true. I've been on the receiving end of that question. What game do you guys want to play next? Or what, you guys want to do a vampire campaign? You guys want to do a wraith campaign?
Exactly. And I think, when you have to do some more research online, I think, if you're planning, but you can't rely too much on it because the thing is, if you're going into something that's really hot now, especially if you're trying to get published with it, if it goes out of favor before it's done published and put out there, it might get thrown on the shelf. It might get published half done, or it might just be no one's looking to buy that style of book when you release it if you're self-publishing. So I don't like to worry too much about that kind of stuff. To me, and as an indie writer, I like to think about what I want to write. And, if it's not super popular now, I write kind of basic stuff, so people are it's always going to come back into parlance again. But if you get into real edgy genre stuff, like hair rock band fantasy from the 80s, that might never come back again.
What about science fiction hair rock band fantasy? That's
always in.
The Starbarians comes to mind.
The Starbarian.
Have you ever? I'm not kidding. That's a thing. Go look up the Starbarians on YouTube. You will see 3 of the most amazing animations I have ever seen.
And it also shows you, too, that genre really is just taking a couple things and sticking them together. So, I mean, if you want to come up with your own, the list that that is going to be linked from our website is by no means comprehensive. But it lists a lot of stuff, and a lot of it you're like, okay. And there's more because the hair rock band, why wouldn't that be a genre with everything?
I mean, yeah, like, dinosaurs and hair rock bands, that works. Medieval and hair rock bands, totally. I mean, Iron Maiden.
But, it's like, once you kind of think about how popular the genre is, how well versed you are in it, especially if you're planning to go to a novel length type of work or longer, really take the time to think about why you love it. Because you have to love it.
And what you love about it.
Exactly. But really think about that, because if you're going to commit to 50 to 100,000 words and coming up with a story and going through it, just to come up with the first draft takes a lot, especially if it's your first time. And then editing it multiple times, you have to love the genre and really want to do it to go ahead. So really be sure that you really want to do the genre before you get 90,000 words in, and then I would still finish the first draft. I would table it at that point, but I'm a big believer in at least finishing your first draft, because there will be some value for you in doing that. But you're going to end up just tabling it no matter how good it is, because you don't like it enough to edit it 4 more times.
And I don't know about you. I mean, I imagine that this is similar for you, but like when I'm writing and I think about like long writing tasks, I'm in that world in my head So for me, it's very immersive. I'm in it for a long time. So if I'm writing a large task, I have to feel comfortable living with that world in my mind and being immersed in it for a long period of time. So like my like the book that I've been toying with for a few years is very rural, out in the woods, and I would call it more rural than suburban, and I'm very comfortable in that environment. So staying that way, and it's a zombie thing, so there's lots of scares and survival aspects to it. So I'm comfortable in that environment. I don't mind being there for a long time. But if I chose a genre that even if I felt comfortable creating it, if I didn't love being in it all the time, I think it would grate on me after a while, and I might get to a point where I wasn't enjoying the project or even resented it.
Yeah.
So you gotta, at least for me, I don't know, do you feel that way when you're writing a long project, like you are in it?
Oh yeah, almost definitely. It's like I kind of see the story, and a few things will come up along the way as I'm writing it out, but pretty much I kind of know the story when I start. So, for me, it's like I'm almost transcribing lots of it, because it's just the story that's in my head. But, the thing is, and I think the thing, and why loving it is so important, or wanting to be in it for long periods of time is important, because let's say you decide, to try and end up making it unique and go, I'm going to do a cyberpunk book based on a farm in a really rural location. The people who come in with an expectation of what cyberpunk means,
you immediately
are going
think
to
city.
be annoyed. They're going to be annoyed because that's never it's like you get the impression in cyberpunk worlds, the entire Earth is covered in a city at that point.
Yeah.
At least where the people are. I've never. You might have a small scene out in the countryside, but it's 99% of it. It's about too many people and not enough room. It's so the people who actually are attracted to it because it says it's cyberpunk. When they get into it, some might like it, but others are going to be offended because this isn't cyberpunk.
Yeah, you want a good example of cyberpunk? Go watch Dread with Carl Urban.
I thought you were going to say Sylvester Stallone.
No. Have you've seen the Carl Urban one, yeah?
That's the newer one?
Yes.
It was very good.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing, too, besides what you love it, is what are the problems of using the genre? Like, if you want to have a lot of stuff, like what Mike was saying, in the forest, survival horror kind of stuff, does not work well with cyberpunk. Survival horror does, but it's a different pace and feeling if it's urban.
They're very different.
And so if you're trying to do cyberpunk survival horror, if you want to do the more isolation survival horror, you're picking the wrong genre. So think about, what are some of the problems with the story you want to tell and how it fits into the genre? How well does it fit? Some stories will fit very naturally. Other ones will fit always. Every story structure will fit in any genre. But the way you're perceiving it, it might not work well in a genre. So you have to kind of think about what are the problems for you using the genre. And Michael brought a great one, which is, do you like being in it for a long period of time? Because if it's a long project, you're going to be in it for a long time.
And obviously, if you're going to be sharing it, like I don't know that I'm ever going to share my project. But like if you're going to share it with players or if you're going to put it out there for fans, can you get them as invested in it as you are? Can you get them interested?
Yeah, most definitely. It's like, I think part of sharing stuff out, players, it's easy. It's like, you're just trying to engage them. If they like you as a game master, they'll give you a lot of leeway and will probably do stuff. Like I had a lot of people who, they would play GURPS with me. And I had several of them tell me that they would never play, they hate GURPS and would never play it with anyone else. But they would always be at my game table, which to me was a huge compliment. But the bigger takeaway is, and that has nothing to do with genre, but it's the truth where some people don't like certain things. And so like if you, as a game master, spend time developing zombie forced ranger survival horror book, which is what Mike's doing. I tell you right now, it's about Ranger Rick surviving the post-apocalypse zombie apocalypse.
He's not a ranger.
No, it's Ranger Rick. It's Ranger Rick.
It's not.
You don't know Ranger Rick?
It's not Ranger Rick.
It's Ranger Rick.
It's not Ranger Rick.
Putting that aside, which it's Ranger Rick.
It's not.
We'll just accept that it's Ranger Rick, and we'll just agree on that point and move on.
It's not Ranger Rick.
But
nor is it Policeman Rick.
If you do that, that's funny because I didn't even think about that. But that's true too. I'm brain damaged right now. But if you create like a very intricate setting and put a lot of time and love into it, and your players really hate it, even if they play with you, it's kind of bogus to do that. It's like if you get your audience in front of you, talk to them. If you're out in conventions, talk to people about your ideas to see what the level of interest is. Mm-hmm. If you're online, talk to people.
Canvas.
Ask questions or do research. Go to Amazon and look to see how high books are ranked in the genre you want to write in compared to the overall, and get an idea of how well they're selling, at least at that moment in time, because you don't want people to not be interested. It's kind of what I'm saying. So, even if it's sharing with a few people or you're trying to sell the world, make sure to get people invested and bring them into your project as it goes along, because the more people you get beta reading, the better it'll end up and more people will like it. So it's all about investing people into it, whether it's your players or your fans, if you want to go the other route.
I think that goes about that about covers it. I mean, I think that we could certainly go on and on this topic, but I think we're definitely
we can start going into genre subtypes.
Well, no, I don't mean
that's a different episode.
My point is we are going to do subgenre episodes, and I do want to keep this short for your health. We can touch base on more of these points while we're talking about the other episodes. So just really some bullet points to walk away from this. We're not talking specifically about what you want to say as a story. That's something that we'll talk about when we talk about creating stories and having a message. But why are you looking for a subgenre? I think something we didn't say, but does it serve the story you intend to create?
We did say that, but okay.
Did we sort of say that? Or
yeah.
No, fair enough. What do you like about it? What doesn't work about it? How well versed in it are you? And even if you're not well versed in it, if it's something you really want to do, then go get versed. Go read stuff, play video games on it. Watch movies about it. Get into it, and understand the inherent problems with that genre before you get too far invested in it, and be willing to be invested in that genre for a while, especially if it's a long project.
Realize if you don't see any problems in a genre, you're not looking at it critically.
You're missing something.
Yeah.
Before we bring this in for a landing, I want to throw a quick personal thing out there. I don't talk a whole heck of a lot about my wife on the show, mostly because she doesn't listen to it.
Yeah.
But I do want to throw a big shout out to my wife, who was just accepted into a PTA program. So she's returning to school, and I'm super proud of her, and I'm thrilled for her.
Physical therapy?
Yes. She will become a physical therapy assistant. It's a 2-year program. And so she just got accepted. Only 30 people get accepted at the school that she applied to. And she's one of those 30. So
that's
I just want
to, too.
Yeah. So it's fantastic field. So I just want to, for the record, put it down. I'm super proud of her. I'm super happy and love her very much.
Woohoo! Congrats.
Do we have? Let me see in your show notes here.
I don't have them written down.
You don't have? Do you have them? Do you have something, or do you want me to create something?
Well, you do the world builder task and make that up, and I have one for the real world task.
Okay, so your world builder task, and I'm gonna make this more fun than we normally would do it. Normally, what we would do for the world builder task is say, think about a subgenre or pick a subgenre.
Something lame that I would write down. Yeah.
Right. What I'm gonna say is write a 1-page story in a subgenre you're thinking about doing. And especially if it's a subgenre that you have not been working with. And see how it feels. See what you can do with it. Just one page. Don't go crazy. Don't spend an exorbitant amount of time with it. Just give yourself a short task to feel it out.
This is a real short story.
Yeah, real short story. And how about the real world?
The real world task of today is to make sure to join the Undercroft and message Michael all of your Ranger Rick fan fiction. He loves it to death.
Big fan.
He is obsessed with Ranger Rick.
Love it.
So join the Undercroft on Facebook. It's facebook.com/groups/Undercroft. Or just search for Fantasy Undercroft and it will pop up. And send Michael your Ranger Rick fan fiction.
And while you're at it, the holidays are coming. So if you're going to be doing any pre-holiday shopping or any shopping whatsoever, if you're going to go to Amazon,
buy Ranger Rick magazine.
Please go to Amazon through our web portal. Go to www.garduel.com/Amazon. It'll just take you to Amazon, and the show gets a kickback. It helps keep us bringing you great content like this.
Have a great week, folks. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.garduel.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.